Good afternoon, everybody, and good morning to some of you in the West Coast. This is Brad Horn from Portable Technology Solutions. I'm joined by Howie Heckman, one of our software engineers, and John Rommel has also joined us. He's the director of RFID channel development for Motorola. So basically, John is in charge of all the resellers out there who are selling RFID, and he's very well versed in RFID, and he's going to be talking about where it's going in the latter half of the webinar. So we're going to start off. I'm just going to go do a high-level overview of where RFID is with TracerPlus 7, and then Howie's going to actually get into the nuts and bolts of how TracerPlus 7 works with RFID, and he's going to set up an application actually on the webinar. And finally, John is going to go finish us off with ROI analysis and get into the details of where RFID has been and where it's going. So anyway, I'll start off now. We now have full RFID functionality. At the TracerPlus price point, we believe we're the only ones out there with this type of feature, which really excites us. I think we're really ahead of the curve with our technology. You have the ability to read, to write, and to do multiple scans at once. And it's going to open up a world of opportunity for our users and our resellers. It's really, all we're limited by now with the RFID technology is the actual memory of a tag. We can do a tremendous amount. In the past, we'd like to think that RFID was really being used to replace a barcode or being used in those situations where a barcode just wouldn't work. We've all seen it in some really high-end retail applications. Everybody's heard of Walmart using RFID. But we really haven't seen it in the SMB space or in the islands of automation within a big organization where you could build a small application and take advantage of RFID. And that's what we're really hoping that our resellers and our customers will be able to do with this release. Now it's possible to scan a tag, rewrite to it, and use it almost like a permanent piece of electronic data. So when you go back to that tag, whether you have WAN or Wi-Fi disengaged, you can scan it and still look up information that's stored on that tag and then update that tag with new information. Where we're seeing initially is the ability to do inventory and asset tracking a lot more efficiently. Now if you do an asset tracking, you're typically using a barcode, scanning the door jamb, going in and scanning everything in the room, and having to look for things that are on the exception area of the TracerPlus application, and then scanning it again, trying to locate it. With RFID, now we're not requiring that you have line of sight. The ability to just keep on getting records coming in consistently as it's picked up by the RFID gun. And you can literally take in 100 RFID tags in 30 seconds and have it via the TracerPlus application with new date timestamps. So you can do that, the entire office scan or a server room, in a matter of minutes, where it might have taken 3 hours with a piece of paper and an hour with the barcode scanner. Now you could get it down to a few minutes with the proper equipment. The next thing is we're going to be able to store multiple fields of data locally. Imagine we go into an area that is not allowed Wi-Fi access. Maybe it's a hospital or a high security zone in a lab, and they don't want you to have Wi-Fi or WAN access, but you still have to look up critical data about the thing you're looking at. Well, now that data can be stored right on that RFID tag, and we have the ability to read that tag, look up the information on that tag, parse it out, and then rewrite the new information or the changes. Maybe it's a date timestamp, or maybe it's a condition, or maybe it's been transported to a new user. We can update those fields right on the tag. So now I'm going to turn it over to Howie, and he's going to take over here.
Okay, before I get started, as I'm going through some of these features here of TracerPlus 7 and RFID, feel free to reach out to us on any of our Facebook pages or Twitter and so on, and you can see them here, the links. But if you have any questions, want to see the community, also get feedback or maybe post your own experiences with RFID as you're setting it up, please feel free to reach out to us on these user groups so that we can get feedback from the community. So with that said, I'm going to jump into setting up and actually showing you the configuration of RFID within TracerPlus and TracerPlus Desktop, and actually show you kind of a live demo of the application being set up, a tag written to it, and read. So with that said, I'm going to jump over to TracerPlus Desktop, and I'm actually going to go ahead and start from scratch a new project to show you some of these features real time. So what I have here is I've opened up TracerPlus Desktop version 7. Okay, I started a new project from scratch, and the first thing that I really want to do if I want to enable RFID reading and writing from my application is actually configure that from the project properties of TracerPlus Desktop. So first thing I'm going to do actually is go ahead and name our project, maybe RFID demo, and then I'm going to jump to the TracerPlus settings of our application here, of our project. Now here's where you can kind of set some global properties of TracerPlus before you push it out to the device. So we have things here such as full screen mode, enabling or disabling of the barcode scanner, as well as the RFID scanner. So for this demonstration, I'm actually going to turn off barcode scanning. You can actually have both of them enabled at the same time, but for the demo, I'm going to turn barcode scanning off. Then I'm going to go ahead and enable my RFID scanner. When I do that, you'll notice some additional properties of the RFID scanning displayed to the right-hand side here. We have first the user memory bank size. So some tags, or some Gen 2 tags, which support the user memory bank, can have different size memory banks. By default, the most common is 64 bytes of data, but they're high-capacity tags and other tags. So you want to specify the size that you want to write to in this field here. So for the demonstration, I'm going to leave it as this default 64 bytes. And then to the right of that, we actually have the EPC tag format. Now this, the EPC values, the value that's actually read from the tag when you pull the trigger. So you're pulling the trigger, reading all the tags in the room, and that EPC value is then translated or entered into your TracerPlus form so that you can review the value and then maybe do some additional information with that RFID tag, like look up information. So you can have two types here. You can have a hexadecimal value or an ASCII value. The hexadecimal value will be read as just your default hexadecimal string. The ASCII value will actually allow you to read and write the tags as like a human readable string. So for the purpose of the demonstration, I'm going to switch it to the ASCII value here. It's a little bit more interesting in demoing so that you can see what I fill out on the form is actually written to the tag and read later on. So I'm going to go ahead and switch that to ASCII. Okay, and that's pretty much all I need to do to turn on RFID scanning for my TracerPlus project. The next thing I need to do is go ahead and create some forms for reading and writing the tags. So I'm going to start off by creating a form to read by pulling the trigger and then writing new EPC values or tag identifiers to the tag. So to do that, I'm going to create a new form, or what we call session here. It's going to open up a default session within our project. Okay, and I'm going to just go ahead and give it a name of maybe RFID Write. And now I'm going to configure the fields that I need in order to write a new value to our RFID tag. So it's going to be a pretty simple session. I'm just going to add a couple fields of information. The first one is actually going to be the RFID tag ID. Okay, so that's the values that we're reading from the different tags when we pull the trigger. So when we pull the trigger, this field will be populated with whatever values read. So similar to if you were to scan a single barcode or something like that, it's taking that value and putting it in within the form. Okay, and then the next field I'm going to actually use to update the tag ID with a new value. So I'm going to add a field on the form that I can actually fill out, and now that's going to get written back to the tag when I do my RFID write. So I'm going to go ahead and name that one new RFID tag, and just leave that as the default field. The next field I want to add is actually, I'm going to do a user value. Now, since Gen 2 tag can actually support different memory banks, so you have different areas where you can write information, I'm going to set up two fields on the form to write to the two different memory banks that TracerPlus supports. So both the EPC memory bank as well as the user memory bank. Now, the user memory bank can be used to write different fields of information. So like Brad had mentioned earlier, you could write multiple fields of information from your TracerPlus form and post that or write that to the tag, so that later on when you come and you want to interrogate this RFID tag, you can actually populate the form with that information. Okay, so I'm going to add a field that will allow me to write that information. And then the last field, as always, I just add a date timestamp to keep track of when I was writing these tags or whatever we may need that for. So then I'm going to go ahead and remove some of the other fields of information here. I'll go ahead and configure a couple things. I'll turn this one into a date time. And now, as far as my session goes, that's pretty much it to begin writing these tags. The next thing I want to do is actually go through and configure the form, the TracerPlus Desktop form, that we're going to then use to scan tags and write the new values. Okay, so I'm going to hop over to the form designer, and I'm going to start by creating the default form based on those fields that I had just created. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and change this form around a little bit. Now, since I'm using a Motorola MC3000Z device, I'm going to shrink this screen size slightly. Okay, so I'll just kind of move things around here. We're going to match the resolution of the MC3000 device. Okay, and I'll move the form. I'm going to move the date time down to the bottom. Move the user value down here. Okay, so this you can kind of play with, pretty it up a bit, but I'm going to kind of quickly add some fields here. Actually, I want to shrink this down. Okay, so now here's the basic look of the form. I have the RFID tag ID field on the top. So when I pull the trigger, the RFID tag ID that I want to write is going to be, or that I read from the trigger, is going to be entered into this field here. And then in the field below, the new RFID tag ID, I'm going to type something new in there and actually write that value to the EPC memory bank on the tag. And then similarly, the user value down here, I'm going to enter some string that is then going to get written to the tag so that I can read that later on. And that doesn't have to be an identifier. It could be any type of data that we may need. So that's pretty much the layout of this form. The next thing I need to do in order to write these tags is to add 2 new buttons to my form. Okay, so these buttons are actually going to perform the write when I click them. So I'll put them next to each one of the values that I'm attempting to write. And I'm going to change the caption on the button to say write using the button properties over here. Then the next thing I need to do is change the action of the button to be an RFID tag write. Okay, so this means when I click this, it's going to, based on some settings that I configure in a second, it's going to go ahead and attempt to write to the tag that I have entered in this field up here. Okay, so now in the button properties, you'll see when I switch to the button action to RFID tag write that there's a new section for RFID properties down here. And there's 3 of them in particular. There's the tag ID control index, the read-write control index, and the tag memory bank. Now, we have to configure each of these in order to write the correct value to the selected memory bank that we want. Now, in the case of writing the new tag ID or EPC value, I want to switch the memory bank that I'm writing to be the memory bank EPC. Okay, so this is going to update the EPC value on the tag. The next thing I need to do is just define the tag ID that I'm attempting to write to, as well as where the new value is that I'm grabbing in order to update that tag. So you can see that goes by control index. So the first one is going to be this tag ID control index. That's the tag, the current tag that I want to update with new information. So I'm going to give it a control index actually of 100 just to make sure it's unique. So I'm using that field. And then I'm going to go down to this RFID tag ID, which is the new one. I'll make this one 200. And while I'm doing this, I'm going to actually change the user one to 300. Okay, so that just guarantees that we have 3 unique values for these fields. And now I'm going to finish configuring the write button. So I select the write again. And now the tag ID control index I'm going to select as 100. So that means that I'm grabbing the value that's out of this field, so the one where the tag was read, and I'm going to use that as the tag that I want to update with new information. So with the read-write control index, this is the new value that I want to write to the memory bank. So in this case, I'm going to select 200. So that's this field here, the new RFID tag ID. So this means that when I click this button, it's going to write to the EPC the new value that's in the new RFID tag ID field, and it's going to write it to this particular tag that was read when pulling the trigger. Okay, I'm going to do pretty much the same thing with the user memory bank, but I'm going to switch obviously the memory bank that I'm writing to. So I'm going to put a new button on the form. I'm going to name it write. I'll go ahead and switch the button action here to be RFID tag write, and then configure it almost the same as the other button that I added to the form. So the tag ID is going to be 100, so we're going to write to this particular tag that we had read from the trigger. And then the write value is going to be, in this case, 300. So whatever I enter into this user value here is going to get written to the tag. Okay, so that's pretty much it as far as configuring the writing a new EPC value or tag identifier, as well as user memory if the tag supports it. So this simple form here will actually perform both of those functions and write it directly to the tag. The last thing I want to do actually before I deploy this to the device is just talk a second about a new feature of TracerPlus called our Smart Form functionality. In the past, when you were using the RFID tag reading of TracerPlus, it would put the tag that you read in the field on the form where you had focus. So if you happen to click in the date-time field of your form, when you would try to read tags, it could, if the focus was there, put the tag ID in the date-time field. So a feature that we added was the ability to, based on whether it was a barcode read or an RFID read, put that value that was read and force it into one of your fields on your forms. So what I want to do is every time I pull that trigger, I want to make sure that the tag that's read is in my RFID tag ID field. So I'm going to jump over to these Smart Form features here. And since I'm not using barcode, I'm using the RFID. So I'm going to select the RFID function here and just enable this. And then from the drop-down, you can select which field in your TracerPlus session that you want to force your RFID tag reads. So in my case, it's going to be this first one, the RFID tag ID. So every time I pull the trigger, it's going to put the new value in that field. Okay, so I think that's everything I wanted to set up. My form here isn't the prettiest in the world, but you can go ahead and change the colors and all of that using the form designer. I'm actually at this point going to save my project and push it down to the mobile device that I have connected, which I'm going to go ahead and share the screen of right now so you can see that. Okay, so I have a Motorola MC3000Z RFID reader connected. I'm going to share the screen here. So you should see this is the Windows Mobile home screen. And now that I'm finished configuring my RFID write form, I actually want to go ahead and push this down to the device. So I'm going to go ahead and just select from the Tools menu the Build Deploy option, and then click Deploy. So this is going to go through a little deployment process. Once this is complete here, it should open up TracerPlus automatically on the RFID device with our one write form. Okay, so the deployment there has completed. You can see TracerPlus is opening up in the background. It has one form configured for RFID writing, so you can see just from the one form that we have in our project here, we have the form accessible by this icon. If I go ahead and click on this, you'll see it should look similar to what we designed in TracerPlus Desktop here, where we have the 3 fields that we need to write our tag, the new tag information, and we should be ready to go here. So I'm going to actually attempt to scan an RFID tag with this device in the cradle here. So what I'm going to do is pick the device up. I have one tag that I'm going to pull the trigger and read the tag. Okay, so as I pulled that trigger, it read the tag ID as an ASCII value from the tag. So similar to a barcode in this case, because I only have one tag in range. But I read that tag. So this is the previous tag ID value. So what I want to do is actually go ahead and maybe update this. So let's say we want to write a new tag ID of RFID demo. Okay, so now with using this value as the previous tag ID, it's going to write to this particular tag with the new tag ID. So I'm going to go ahead and see if I can line the RFID device up again, and I'm going to just click this write button. Okay, and after the write's done, it'll give you whether or not it was successful. Okay, you just hit OK to that. And what I'm actually going to do now is clear my form so that you can see the next time I pull this trigger, you can see I've picked up the RFID demo EPC value that I've now written to the tag. So that tag that was previously tag 0001 is now, it has a tag identifier of RFID demo. Okay, so I had actually taken the previous value and now written the new EPC value to it. Now, that kind of focuses on just the tag identifier. Something else that we added to the form here is this user memory bank. So these Gen 2 tags, where supported, some tags don't have a user memory bank, you can write to this additional memory bank any information that you'd like. So what I'm going to actually go ahead and do here is, in the user value, I'm just going to write some string that maybe we want to populate later on. So I'm going to go ahead and maybe say my new tag user memory or something like that. So I'm writing some value to the form. Now typically this would be something maybe that deals with the asset or the item that you're inspecting or the asset that you're auditing. You could enter new information about that asset that you want to just post to the user memory so that later on you can retrieve that and maybe populate fields on the form. So this can really be anything that you want, and it can also be a calculation of different fields. So from the screenshot that Brad actually showed before, we had a description field, a location, and I believe an owner. Those three fields were all added together in order to write back to the tag, so that later on when you come through and scan that tag ID, it's actually populating the entire form just from that one read. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to, with my new EPC value of RFID demo, I'm going to write this user memory. Okay, so I'm aiming the MC3000 device here at the tag. I'm going to go ahead and press my right button. It's going to write the user memory. And now we should have available on this RFID tag additional information about the item that we're writing that we can then come back and read later on. So in my sample here, I didn't set up the user memory read yet. So what I'm going to do is actually go back and create a form that I can scan an RFID tag and read the user memory. So we can grab that additional information from the tag that tells us more about the item. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just exit out of TracerPlus here. I'm going to go back to our TracerPlus Desktop project. Okay, and now I'm going to add a new section to the form. And this one I'm going to actually call RFID Read. Okay, so it's pretty much the opposite of the write function there. And we're just going to make another simple session where we add three fields this time. RFID tag ID, the user value, and as always, I like to just put a date time stamp on the form. So I'll go ahead and change this, read only. Okay, and I'm going to remove some of the other fields. Okay, I'm going to jump over to our form designer again and do make the form look pretty similar to our previous one. So I'm just going to move this up to fit the screen resolution of the MC3000. Okay, I'll shrink this down to the screen resolution size. Okay, so I'm just going to, in this case, I just want to move my user value down. And I'm going to add a button now onto the form that does the opposite function of what we did on the first session. Okay, so I'm going to select that button. This time I'm going to say read. And this time I'm going to change the button action to be RFID tag read. Okay, so now this setup here is very similar to the RFID tag write, in that we want to use a couple fields on the form in order to perform this read function. So I'm going to go ahead and select our RFID tag ID, and just like in the first one, I'm just going to change the control index to be 100 just to make sure that it's unique. Then we're going to say for the user field, we're going to do that one as 200, just again to make unique. And then we're going to go back to this read button. Okay, we're going to change the tag ID control index, which again is the tag that we've read that we now want to retrieve some user information for. So that's going to be the 100 values. That's going to be this RFID tag ID field. And then the read-write control index now is opposite of writing to the tag, but we're going to select the field that we want to populate with our new user memory that was read from the tag. So in this case, it's going to be 200. Okay, and then just like for the first form, I just want to force RFID scans data into this first field. So again, I'm just going to make sure that I select the RFID tag ID, because we don't want to accidentally write tag information into, say, our date time field. Okay, but that's pretty much it. It's still a pretty ugly form here, but I'm going to go ahead now and push this down to the mobile device. Okay, when this completes, now you should see two forms available within TracerPlus. Okay, again, when it after the deployment, it will automatically open up TracerPlus on our MC3000. Okay, so now you can see just from our project here, we have RFID write and RFID demo rather than read. But if I go ahead and select the RFID demo application, you'll see our form, like you see behind me here. I'm going to go ahead and attempt to read the tag again from the MC3000 device. Okay, now I read the RFID demo tag. And now since I have a particular tag that I want to interrogate to grab my user value, I'm just going to, let me hit the read button here. Okay, and now you can see it actually interrogated the tag and grabbed the user memory that was pulled, or that we had written to the tag from our other session. So now, just again, this is a very simple setup where we're actually just using one field in both the write session as well as the read to just write a single field of data to the tag. But we can actually increase this to be different fields. So just like that screenshot you guys saw before. So this is a pretty simple application, but it shows you how you can configure the read and write of the RFID demo using this Motorola MC3000Z device. Also like to mention that I've been going through the tag reading and writing within TracerPlus 7. We'll have we have them up on the Solution Center of multi-tag read type scenarios. So I didn't go through that today, but it is a feature that we support so that you can read multiple tags and, like Brad had mentioned earlier, do some type of exception report on within TracerPlus, so that you can see the assets that were read in a room if you want to read all of them at once, and then maybe see the ones that are missing or ones that shouldn't be there. So that is all possible with TracerPlus, and we even have some samples up on the Solution Center of those applications that you can download and trial today. We will be getting RFID reading and writing applications up on the Solution Center as well, so you can play with some of those. But I really encourage people to download TracerPlus 7.0 from our website and begin trialing some of this the RFID capabilities. You can run it in the trial mode and really kind of see the power of RFID tag reading and writing within the new version of the software.
Thanks, Howie. It was great. And I hope everybody sees the value in what we've done with the TracerPlus 7 release and RFID. I think it's truly cutting edge and simple enough for pretty much anyone to create an RFID application now. So anyway, I want to introduce John Rommel. John is going to be doing the next portion of the presentation. He's the Director of RFID Channel Development with Motorola. So in North America, he handles all of the resellers who are selling RFID, and he's going to be doing a presentation on Motorola RFID and the ROI it presents.